to look at that. And you mentioned about the Chancellor there, and I'm interested in a question that I'm thinking here is for Neil. Being a finance man, do you think he's done a good job? He's been mightily impressive. He looks mightily impressive on the television, and he's given a lot of money away. What's your thoughts, Neil?
Well, he has a history. I mean, he does come from the dark side, Jamie, because he was in private equity and he was a partner in a big private equity player in his 20s. So he's clearly pretty sharp and pretty bright, and he married into a very wealthy family. So he has a whole range of high-end houses in Kensington and else, and some sort of country manor in North Yorkshire. So he's got an interesting background, interesting character. I think his actions, the benefit of what he's done, he acted very quickly. So I think that was in two respects. The first one was when he and the Treasury got together with the Bank of England, and then it does seem, and I think he and Boris are trying to take some credit here, they corralled the other central banks, and we saw those moves in March where all the central banks intervened on the same day on a massive scale, and global markets suddenly seemed to correct, and VIX fear indices went down, and there was a massive change almost overnight when all of those banks acted together, because in the past you've always seen differences and divisions. So I think he certainly played a role in that. I think that what he's done in the UK, again, he acted quickly. Some of it, you could be critical. I think the 80% furlough, that may be slightly over generous. I think that you could have paid it maybe a slightly lower rate and had the same or maybe a better effect. I've got lots of stories from friends of mine in business where they've tried to get staff back and they said, well, I'm quite comfortable on my 80%, actually I'm having quite a nice time. And it creates those sort of problems. So maybe that was a little over generous. I've touched on that £1,000 for returning employees again, that because that was across the board. You've got, I think, where you've enforced a closure on a business and they've gone to zero revenue, you need to support all of that. But this was supporting any business at all that didn't have to furlough people, maybe just chose to furlough them and then bring them back, and suddenly they've got a few £100,000 that they weren't even counting on. So that one's, I think that could have been more targeted. I think perhaps the furlough could have been slightly more targeted. But broadly, I think it was just necessary. It had to be done on this scale in that time. We'll see how it plays out from here, because there's that taper down now of the furlough scheme to the end of October, and we'll just see how much more he's going to need to do. I do think next week is going to be quite key, because that's 1st of August. That's when the taper of the furlough starts. And I know a lot of businesses issued 6-week redundancy notices in the middle of June. So you will see a jump in unemployment next week onwards. And he'll have to be, I think, assessing this very carefully, the scale of that unemployment. Of course, what they're trying to do is keep everybody in employment. As soon as you've got millions of people claiming benefit, then that's a huge cost to state anyway. So maybe the lesser of two evils, to remain flexible on furlough scheme, and perhaps some of those businesses, the travel industry, the hospitality and so on, they may have to do a bit more. He may have to reach in and do more. What I think he is, he's pretty active and he's moving quickly. So I think where he needs to do something, he will. But Earl, I think, touched on it there. The political agenda is all about being popular, and I just hope he gets free rein to do what's necessary in the right areas, without just trying to sort of please everybody. But I think overall, Jamie, I'd say he's done a reasonable job. He's popular right now because he's handing out money. The converse of that, when he starts trying to recover it, he may find himself being a lot less popular.
Yeah, I know, it's quite mad, because if you think just go a year back, probably the majority of the population didn't know who he was. So it's, his career's took a big change over the last 12 months. But I think I agree with you overall. I think he's done an okay job. And something I agree with the furlough scheme, and the £1,000 for employees. I know Dan Harrison had an opinion on this on a previous podcast, but I don't know how you, Neil Earl, feel as my employer, I suppose, on the you've worked really hard, you've adapted the business, and we furloughed no staff. And I know we're not expecting any benefit from it, but it's a bit of a kick in the teeth, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll touch on that there, Jamie, because again, I think if you're in a business where the government has forcibly closed you down and denied you having any revenue, and you think of gyms opening just last week, they've had zero revenue for all that time. You can see, well, perhaps some extra help is merited there, but you do see professional services firms, other firms, they haven't, we've chosen as a matter of policy, and also the business has done very well through the period, and the levels of new business actually have been up, so we've actually done well. So we've had the need to employ staff, but we also chose, with certain staff, reception staff and other support staff, we retrained them to work within the business and keep 100% of the staff fully employed. So I think if you see, equivalent businesses to ours where they may have chosen sort of tactically to furlough quite a few staff, and now they've actually found that their business has been near normal, perhaps if they're professional services or consultancy or that sort of line, their fees may be right up there where they were, and they've really had a bit of a windfall. Now they're going to get another windfall, which is this £1,000, and it does make you question it a bit, and that's why I say I think with things like that, it should be very carefully targeted, and companies that have any level of responsibility, and a number of them have come out, haven't they? I mean, Primark were the first, and John Lewis and others. They're just not going to take that £1,000 because it was always in their plan when they were allowed to open. They'll bring as many people back as they can and keep them on permanently. Compared to us, I think there are a lot of firms who are probably keeping very quiet, Jamie, at the moment, and saying, well, we'll just pocket that. That's a bit of a windfall, a bit of a bonus. And keep quiet, but it's about targeting, and as I say, I hope from now on they'll very carefully target those sectors that have been actually hit by government policy, and if they need a bit more help, they'll just have to do that.